Beyond the buzzer, inside the game, this is Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
And away we go, already in the middle of the week, this Wednesday. Hopefully it's a good day for you so far. Larry Smith with a great show coming up here. Koki Riley joining us here in a couple of minutes to talk about the LSU Tigers. Of course, it is the Lane Kiffin era. And after, he tried to hijack the headlines during the college football playoff. Now he's on center stage for real. And now it gets real, right? Because they're not expected to come down to Baton Rouge and just win 8 games a year. They want much, much more than that down in the Bayou. So we'll talk with him. And then a bit later, Anwar Richardson comes on, Texas Longhorns. You know, Anwar is somebody who you should hire out for parties, because literally he is a guy, not only does he have the goods, but he is entertaining. I mean, you kind of like just wind him up and go. And I mean that in the best way. I mean, Anwar is hilarious. And so he's from orangebloods.com, and he'll be joining us here a bit later. And also, speaking of college football, producer Tony's preseason top 25 continues. We're now at number 18. And by the way, we've got SEC with LSU and Texas. We're talking about those two insiders. Producer Tony gives us a hint. Number 18 in his poll also is an SEC team. So there you go. Okay, a couple of headlines for you. MLB trade deadline Monday. Last night, we got to see some of those new faces in action with their new teams. In Chicago, Wrigley Field, new Dodger Tariq Skubal taking the mound for LA against the Cubbies, and he was solid. 6 innings pitched, 4 hits allowed, struck out 6, also gave up 2 earned runs. Cubs pitchers a little bit better. The starter, Javier Assad, and 4 relievers combining to hold the Dodgers to just 4 hits and 1 run. Cubs get the win 5-1. Freddie Peralta, who the Rays got from the Mets at the deadline, had a rough first outing in Colorado for the Rays, lasting only 3 2/3 innings, giving up 9 hits and 7 earned runs. That's not good. Now, one of the other big Tampa acquisitions did his part for the team. New catcher Liam Hicks came from the Marlins, launched a grand slam in the first inning. By the way, the first slam for the Rays all season, as they earned the 9-7 win over the Rockies. That went 11 innings. The Yankees, meanwhile, getting a boost from someone who was not with the big league club at the deadline, but was a homegrown boost. Top prospect George Lombard Jr. made his debut at shortstop, and in the 5th inning, he launched a 2-run shot to left to give the Yankees all the runs they would need in a 2-0 win. At 21 years, 63 days old, Lombard becoming the 6th youngest Yankees player since 1985 to make his debut, and the 2nd youngest shortstop in that span. This guy named Derek Jeter. Heard of him? Yeah, thought so. He debuted May 29th, 1995 in Seattle at 20 years, 337 days, by the way, for the Yankees. Quick story on Derek Jeter. Actually covered him in the minors. And right away, we're like, who is this kid? He was so smooth, even as a teenager, playing down in the Florida Gulf League way back in the day in the early 90s. Hey, one game played in the W on Tuesday. Janelle Salon scoring 21 points. Kayla Thornton hitting a couple of quick threes, 2 more early in the second half on her way to 20 points. Golden State Valkyries. We keep talking about Golden State. Look out for them in the playoffs. Holding off this year's expansion team, the Toronto Temple, for a second straight game, 92-82. One other note from the W, by the way, the Cleveland expansion team giving their nickname the Sirens, ode to the Odyssey. Good timing on that. So the Cleveland team, by the way, won't begin play until 2028, but now we know who they are. Time now for today's moment of awe. And if they ever decided to rename August the month of Michael Phelps, you really couldn't argue. In August 2004 in Athens, the Baltimore native tied the Olympic record by gaining 8 medals in a single games with 6 gold and 2 bronze medals. In August 2008 in Beijing, Phelps did it again, making history by becoming the first Olympian to win 8 gold medals at any single Olympics, breaking the 36-year-old record of 7 golds set by American swimmer Mark Spitz in Munich. I interviewed Phelps a day later as he compared the weight of 8 gold medals against the expectation of winning 8 golds. But he wasn't done there. August 2012 in London, more history. 4 gold and 2 silvers to become the most decorated Olympian ever. Phelps retired but returned in 2016 to Rio de Janeiro to win 5 more golds and 1 silver. Michael Phelps, 28 total medals in his illustrious career. That's more medals than 161 countries, and his 23 golds setting another Olympic record. Michael Phelps, owning August, gets our moment of awe.
You're listening to Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
Sports IQ with Larry Smith continues right now. It is football season. We've talked about all the talking season. Now it's time for the preseason practice season to get going. Joining us here on the show is Koki Riley. He is the LSU football and baseball writer for The Advocate, also NOLA.com. Koki, welcome to Sports IQ.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so camp is about to begin this week. You were telling us in the break. They report on Tuesday and then practice on Wednesday. Let's first take us back to in terms of Lane Kiffin coming in. You know, I can't recall a storyline dominating the postseason that had nothing to do with the games themselves, like we have with Lane Kiffin going from Ole Miss to LSU. What did you know from your end in terms of how that all played out?
Yeah, so that was just a big game of, I won't say cat and mouse, but it was just a big waiting game where I think the moment that his family landed in Baton Rouge, or were reportedly going to land in Baton Rouge, it just turned into like a big circus after that. And I think like the longer the saga went on, the more you felt like he was going to come to LSU, because if he was going to go to Ole Miss, he would have squashed the story already. And it felt like LSU was kind of in pole position over a place like Florida, just because of like I don't just because just the potential of this job is actually higher than the Florida job, even though the Florida job um, has plenty of championship pedigree as well. And a lot has to do with the recruiting, the recruiting base, the natural recruiting base that you get, the fact you're not really sharing the state with any other major Power Four program. And I think all that sort of resulted in them eventually landing Kiffin. And if I had to theorize, like, I think he always wanted to come to LSU. The question was really more about, trying to convince Ole Miss to let him, stay there and coach through the playoff before heading over to Baton Rouge. I think that was kind of the delay, in my opinion. Again, that's me mostly theorizing that. But yeah, like it was a crazy, crazy time.
Yeah, no question about that. And like you said, I think that was my thing is that if you don't want to coach there, just say so. But the longer it rocked on, the more it was. And I think that if anyone who doesn't understand how big LSU football is there in the state, when I was hearing reports of meetings, the governor having meetings in the governor's mansion or in his executive offices regarding LSU football and that job, I'm like, okay, this is just taken on. I can't imagine any other governor having that kind of situation where you're having those kinds of meetings in his chambers.
Yeah, LSU in Louisiana is different. There's a history of governors interfering, helping, whatever you want to call it, with the LSU football program in particular. I think LSU football and the Saints are kind of tied for, like the biggest sports influence in the state, and this is really a football state. This stat was true, and if I had to guess, it's still probably true, where no state is a higher per capita for NFL players than Louisiana. And there's just a ridiculous amount of talent out here, and that creates a lot of attention. And for the governor, or for any other governor, like, it's an opportunity to kind of boost your popularity within the state if you're getting involved with the football program in a positive sense. Like, now Jeff Landry has exerted his influence on LSU outside of just football. But with the men's basketball coach Will Wade, with the board of supervisors, with the president of the school, with the athletic director following the Brian Kelly fiasco, but like now but by LSU landing Lane Kiffin, he can kind of say now that, hey, I was the one who helped get Lane Kiffin, even if even if a lot of that even if like the pursuit of Lane Kiffin honestly just kind of contradicted all the negative things he said about the Brian Kelly contract, the Brian Kelly situation. So that's just everywhere else that would be seen as something unforeseen. There's actually a history of it in Louisiana. I mean, I mean, Huey Brown, even going to the Bobby Jindal was involved for a little bit as well. So again, there's just kind of a history there of it happening, and with this governor in particular, he's particularly involved with the football program. So it's all pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's a little bragging rights. Now he can boast at the when he's in the luxury suite on game day. He could say, "I'm the guy who did this." Okay, so the Tigers now 2026 version. Lane Kiffin is here. He's been in place now for roughly 8 months. What do we expect now from this LSU team that we have not seen the past few years under Brian Kelly? Look, LSU, you expect to win. You expect championships. What do we expect out of this Lane Kiffin team?
When you got in the offseason was a lot more money put into the transfer portal. I think they definitely upgraded in that regard. Last season, they were kind of behind on the NIL game, to be honest, when it first started to really ramp up under, toward the beginning of the Brian Kelly era. By the end of it, they had gotten to a point where, they were one of the top teams in the country in terms of the pieces that they were adding through the transfer portal. And then Lane Kiffin kind of took that system and supercharge it even further to the point where now you're adding, 3 of the top 10 players in the portal. You're adding potential first and second round picks out of the transfer portal. That's a very, very hard to come by. They had the best transfer portal haul in the cycle this season. It's pretty clear that's the case. It's not just Sam Levitt at quarterback. It's Jordan Seaton at left tackle. It's Prince Will Uman at one of the edge spots. It's TJ Daughtery at linebacker. His Ole Miss connections definitely helped him out there with those latter two names. But I mean, Jordan Seaton, that was pure dollars and cents, and Lane Kiffin's recruiting ability and whatever, and just the need for a left tackle given the struggles of the of their offensive line last season. So they definitely exerted a level of recruiting power that they simply never showed during the Brian Kelly era. It wasn't necessarily bad in the Brian Kelly era. They had a very, very talented transfer portal class. Not this offseason, but last offseason. They had, top 10-ish recruiting classes. This recruiting class, I mean, there was more borderline top 10 than actual top 10, but they retained the 5-star commits that they had. And they were definitely rumored to be in on a lot of guys that didn't end up landing because at the, the 11th hour, they were like, hey, we got that, we can offer you this, and let's see what happens here. And they weren't able to really pull off a lot of those, but it was kind of like a sheer sign of intent to the college football world that LSU was not screwing around. And I mean, they added a whole bunch of guys in the portal. Not all of them were big names, big money. I mean, that part of the Ole Miss success was also kind of landing a lot of unheard of transfers from smaller schools and turning those guys into major contributors. That's going to be part of the blueprint this season as well. That's a lot of the depth of this team is a combination of transfers from much smaller schools, everything as low as D2 and JUCO, all the way up to your Jordan Seatons, and then you have a bit of a freshman class as well. That's kind of the depth of this team. But there's also just a lot of star power. I mean, they maintained a lot of a decent amount of pretty much all the guys that they wanted to maintain from last year's roster, especially on the defensive side of the ball. While also on offense, totally retooling what was kind of a broken attack last year, but keeping a couple of the guys that had at least promise, like a Harlem Berry, who was a former 5-star recruiter at running back, or a Atreides Green at tight end, who is an athletic freak at 6'7". So that's kind of the makeup of this year's team. It's stars to the portal. It's a lot of unheard of guys to the portal. It's freshmen, and it's a few of the top names that they wanted to retain, especially in the defensive side, because this defensive staff is very similar to the one, if not almost exactly the same as the one they had under Brian Kelly. And Blake Baker, I think, is going to have even more autonomy to build that unit the way he sees fit, because that's what Lane Kiffin does. He lets his defensive coordinators be the head coach of the defense.
Yeah. Talking here with Koki Riley. Once again, he's an LSU football and baseball writer for The Advocate and NOLA.com. No rest for the weary. I mean, it is baptism by fire down there in Baton Rouge. You get Clemson in the opener in the return game from last year. The Tigers coming off a dismal season. It's Dobble Swinney. It's another guy with rings on his fingers trying to come back. And then you get, at the end of the month, the back half of September, two playoff teams. Ole Miss, which of course is going to be a game that everybody in the country is going to be watching, and then you get Texas A&M, another team that reached the playoffs. So I mean, here's one right away. Lane Kiffin, if things don't go well, could end September with a 1-3 record.
Yeah, there's definitely a chance. I think they're pretty clearly better than Clemson. They should win that game. If they don't win that game, then that's a pretty big red flag as we go through the rest of the season, because as you mentioned, their SEC schedule is brutal. Like, that's just the beginning of the schedule. You mentioned with Ole Miss and Texas A&M going, I believe, going back to back, and I'll have the schedule pulled up in front of me right now. And that doesn't even include Alabama in Tiger Stadium, Texas in Tiger Stadium, Tennessee on the road. It's not the toughest schedule in the country. It's not the toughest schedule in the SEC, but I think it's probably toward the top half in terms of the tougher schedules in the conference. And it's just like there's a lot of challenges in the way. I mean, they have Auburn on the road, which could get a little tricky. They have Kentucky on the road. The home schedule in particular is one of the wildest. Obviously Ole Miss and Tennessee on the road, like those are massive for mostly off the field reasons, and for Ole Miss on the field reasons as well. But the home schedule is just like filled with headliners. You got Clemson, Texas A&M, Texas, Alabama. They play Alabama and Texas back-to-back weeks.
Right.
They got a bye, then Alabama and Texas, and then Tennessee on the road. So it's just I've never seen. I mean, I've been on the beat since Brian Kelly's first year, and I've never seen a home schedule, really a schedule quite like this. It's definitely the most star-studded that they've ever had, and you can thank the elimination of divisions for that.
Right. Exactly. And by the way, if you are a season ticket holder, congratulations, because you got a sweet package there at Tiger Stadium this year. You mentioned Will Wade. I want to get a very quick comment, because basketball has been also in the news in terms of Will Wade coming in, the way that he arrived, coming in from NC State, the past he's had, the recruiting stuff that he's done. He's somebody too that kind of like Lane Kiffin, kind of just marches to his own beat, and he's going to do what he wants to do regardless of what other people think he should do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the wildest things about that whole situation, we still don't totally know who's going to be on the team next year.
It's August.
And it's because, I mean, they've announced, I think, enough players for a starting lineup at this point. And I think a guy for every position. But especially a lot of the bigs that they added were international guys who haven't been fully cleared for their eligibility. Some of them have a higher probability of being on the team than not. But I think a lot of the court cases and the Senate bill and these sort of things could affect what the roster for that team, for their team, looks like next season. And not in a positive way, especially with the Senate bill. So again, it's the total unknown. Like RJ Lewis was like the Big East player of the year 2 years ago, literally goes to the NBA, plays in a preseason game for the Celtics. And now he's technically on the team, or like he's working out in Baton Rouge at least. And like that, he's probably the least likely of the guys that they're going to end up landing. He's not even an international guy, but like that's kind of that gives you kind of an idea of like the chaos that's going on with the LSU men's basketball roster. Because it's kind of the expectations right now are NCAA tournament or bust, given the amount of money that they've pumped into this program from an NIL standpoint, with adding these international guys, and also just from a coaching standpoint, when you pry a guy like Will Wade away, pay the buyout of the last coach you had, Matt McMahon, and then give him a new contract. So they've put a renewed focus into LSU men's basketball. That's something that they just hadn't had a focus on the last few years. LSU is backwards in that I don't want to say backwards, but it's very different in that, baseball, women's basketball are much bigger than the men's basketball program right now, at least.
At least we know this, LSU athletics, it's never disappointing or boring. Koki, great to talk with you on the show. We got to leave it there. Hey, enjoy this week as things get ramped up, and hopefully as the season gets going, we can talk to you again soon.
Yep, that sounds great. Thank you so much.
All right, appreciate you. Thanks so much. Koki Riley joining us once again. He is the football and baseball LSU beat writer for The Advocate and for NOLA.com. Lane Kiffin's Tigers, looking forward to what will be a very interesting September down there in Baton Rouge. All right, stay with us. More Sports IQ after this.
Are you paying too much for term life insurance? There's a tremendous price war among the major term life companies. Rates have dropped dramatically in the past 2 years. For example, a man age 45 non-tobacco user, $1 million of coverage is only $75 per month, level for the next 10 years. Or a man age 50 non-tobacco user can buy $500,000 of coverage for a monthly premium of only $110, guaranteed not to change for the next 20 years. That's right, level rates for 20 years. And if you're a smoker, we have great rates for you as well. At the Term Lifeline, we specialize in policies of $500,000 and above. So if you're looking for new or replacement term life insurance, call right now for a free quote.
Rates and availability may vary by state. Sample rate quotes are based on preferred non-tobacco underwriting exam required to qualify.
Call 855-826-7932. 855-826-7932. That's 855-826-7932.
Welcome back here. Let's talk a little more college football. Interesting story that I saw this morning on Front Office Sports, where some of these schools signing these jersey patch deals. We talked about Notre Dame, Ohio State, Illinois, among others that have signed these with some, with some national or larger regional companies. They're not releasing the contracts of these. They're saying the contracts don't exist because they're done kind of in a third party, like through their through like another source like Learfield or some other company is being done. And so therefore, when there is a Freedom of Information Act, a FOIA, as you call it in the media, request for these documents, they're being rejected, saying, oh, they don't exist. And so producer Tony, another thing as we talk about the Protect College Sports Act now, trying to move that to kick that ball further along in Congress, get something happening. Here's another situation where we already have it with name, image, likeness. Like we don't hear all the details of how much schools are spending or what certain players are getting. That already is like in the dark across the board at every school, every program, every sport. And then on top of that, now you've got this with the more millions of dollars being poured in, and there's just no transparency on what that looks like and how that's structured.
No, you'd have no idea what teams have, what schools have to work with, how much they've got to play with. We know that House settlement, they were supposed to distribute, $20 million, but there's so much other money, like you said, dark money around these programs that people just don't know where it came from, how it got there, where it's going, how they're doing it. That's why you've got, rosters on football teams looking at $35-40 million for a roster. That's why you've got basketball rosters at $25-30 million. There's no accountability right now. I don't know if the real help there is Congress getting involved, just based on what we've seen in the last 20 years with the American government. We'll have to see. But you would think that somehow the NCAA would clamp down on this, but their track record in, court cases is like way below the Mendoza batting line at this point in time. I mean, they're hitting less than $1 at this point with as many cases as they've lost.
Yeah, it's I'm not holding my breath on this. And I know that over the weekend, we didn't get too deep into it, but the Big Ten and SEC have kind of signed off and made some changes, and it's allegedly moving to the next thing. But until this thing is passed and then implemented, because the other question is, let's say these things all come to pass. Okay, well, who implements them? Is it the College Sports Commission? Is it the NCAA? I don't know. I don't know. So anyway, that conversation is going to continue. We got a lot of SEC today with LSU a few minutes ago. Texas coming up next with Anwar Richardson. And you and I were talking. It's going to be another fun year in the Southeastern Conference with Georgia and Texas consider right there at the top, but Texas A&M went out and spent a lot of money after reaching the playoffs. Alabama's always there. And the question is, can Lane Kiffin do something in LSU, and can Ole Miss recreate their magic from last year when they became the darling of the playoffs?
Yeah, there's a lot of schools where there's been a lot of changes. You've got Florida is going to have a new coach. Auburn's got a new coach. Ole Miss kept their interim coach, but still a little bit different. You've got Lane Kiffin, and there's an awful lot of talent. And a lot of people aren't really taking Oklahoma very seriously around the country, and I think they really should. Oklahoma is a team with a really strong defense, and we know you and I have covered sports going on between the two of us for 60 years.
Yeah.
Defense wins championships in football.
Yeah.
If you can make it so all you got to tell your offense is don't screw the pooch. We got this covered. You can win a lot of football games. And I think Oklahoma has that kind of defensive ability out there, and they're well coached. They're good athletes. They're fast. Could be quite an interesting mix in the SEC. And having that 9th conference game is going to trip some teams up, I think, along the way, because that's one less. You had to make that a conference game instead of some patsy along the way.
Yeah, and I'm really curious, like you said, because there are unbalanced schedules. That's just a thing of college football moving forward. I mean, we're not going to go back down to 8 and 10 team leagues. That's just not going to happen. So, to your point, no one's going to play the same, and so unfortunately, the conversations at the end of the season in terms of which schedule is tougher or who had that third loss and why it should matter or shouldn't matter. That conversation is going to happen, but I'm curious to see how it happens in this framework with them, the SEC playing 9 games, just as the other top power conferences. Okay, speaking of, Texas Longhorns up next with our friend Anwar Richardson, next on the Sports IQ. Sports IQ, Larry Smith continues right now with one of our, we haven't talked about a few months now because we try to give him a break, because we only want to go to him when we absolutely have to. And we have to because we need to get our Texas fix. Anwar Richardson from OrangeBloods.com joining us here talking Longhorns. Anwar, how was your summer been?
Man, it's been great, man. I was able to do some traveling this summer. We were able to go to Europe. So I was able to hit Madrid, hit a little bit of France, hit a little bit of Italy, went to Cinque Terre, I went to Venice. So I feel good. Yeah, that all that tells you is that I'm in a relationship. That's all that tells you. That they don't tell you nothing else. What does that tell you? It tells you that that's a man with a woman who's got to make travel plans. But outside of that, I'm good and I'm ready for football season.
There you go. Got to keep her happy. And now you can say, baby, I got to get back to work, baby.
Baby, I got to get to Knoxville. I hope you enjoyed Venice. I got plenty of beautiful places in the SEC I got to check out. Did you see what Starkville's like in November, honey? No, I'm just joking.
Well, listen, the great thing is, since we've been talking Texas Longhorns, and we were talking earlier this week about Texas schools right now I've got my eye on them because, again, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, SMU, TCU have all been in the college football playoff. You go to basketball, you've got, the Houston Cougars doing their thing, right? So, but Texas football right now, very quickly here in year 3 of the SEC, have established themselves as one of the teams in this very powerful conference.
Yeah, I mean, they're in the conversation, right? They were predicted, the last year to finish first. This year, they're number 2. Georgia, rightfully so, with the number 1 pick there as well. And I just think that, that's a credit to Sark. The one thing they'll hang their hat on is being able to say that they've had at least 3 straight 10-win seasons. I think, it's kind of tough last season because if they fall short of expectations, I think everybody expected them to do a lot more than what they were able to do. They didn't make the playoffs. And it's kind of like, nowadays you can get a bowl victory. Maybe that bowl victory might get you to double digits, but the bowl games, you're not in the playoffs, is almost like going to the NIT, right? It's cool. You won, but you're not in the field of 64 or whatever the field is now. Was it 68 or something like that? So it's kind of one of those. It's a cool consolation prize, but it's not really what you're gunning for. And at the end of the day, every program that is viewed and we start viewing measures of success, it's really do you make the playoffs or not? And that's where Texas is. They're one of those teams that you got to look at and say, did you make the playoffs? Well, you didn't. Well, so now you're trying to go for consolation prizes. This year is for them getting back to really where they once were, which was they were a semifinal team for 2 straight years. They did it in the 4-team playoffs. They did it when they expanded to 12. They fell short last year. And there's a variety of reasons that went into that. The Florida loss, major. That they can't ignore that. The Ohio State loss before that to start off the season, that contributes to it. And then, Georgia. You guys know, I mean, damn near Georgia happens every year. And the Kirby Smart versus Sarkisian thing, Kirby's pretty much has owned this program, at least on the Sark. So this really is about them getting back to that. They've got guys through the transfer portal. This is it's a year of what I wouldn't say is it's a lot of pressure. Not pressure as in that Sarkisian loses his job after this season. It just becomes really, really uncomfortable for him if they don't get back to ones they once were. When you talk about Arch in year 4, right? This it has to happen. When you talk about the guys that they've gone out in the transfer portal, it's got to happen. When you talk about bringing in Will Muschamp as your defensive coordinator, it's got to happen. Spending in NIL, all those kind of things, it adds to the pressure of this season. And so Texas will have to respond. Again, everything is about not only getting back to the playoffs, we're really getting back to what they once were, where at least the semifinals that you were able to do with Quinn Ewers. So there's a lot to talk about as relates to Texas. But for me, it is probably one of the most pressure-filled years that the Longhorns have been on in a really, really long time.
And you talk about Arch Manning. I think this is the year that we as college football fans have been waiting for, right? I mean, he sat behind Quinn Ewers, and now he had the starter last year, got the slow start. Things finally developed for him, began to click. This is the year that everyone's waiting. Okay, it's Arch Manning's year, and so that adds extra pressure on not just the program but on him as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's year 4. Arch Manning. So how old we're getting. Which we already know. Arch Manning graduates from college in December, guys. It's over. Like, he literally graduates, so when you start talking about us remembering his uncles playing, and now, you have the nephew playing, well, he's about to graduate and probably go pro next year, right? So the time is ticking. But at the end of the day, like, to your point, this is year 4. The one thing Sark can't have, the one thing that cannot happen is if you want to be the quarterback whisperer, you can't have a Manning and not have something to your name to hang your hat on, right? That is, we talk about the first families of sports, right? And when you start talking about the Mannings, that's like the whole family in hockey, right? That is just what that is. You've got to be able to say to yourself, I had an Arch Manning for 4 years and we accomplished this. If you can't say I had him for 4 years and we won the Cheez-It Bowl, 2 straight years like that no one will appreciate that. No one wants to hear that. So the thing is, like, he's got to be able to, Sark and Manning are somewhat tied together, but more so for Sark, he's got to be able to say, I was able to get something out of it, because at the end of the day, if you're Sark, you can't have Quinn Ewers, 7th round pick, Arch Manning. Well, we did okay, right? No. It's got to be better than that. So, but Arch Manning, this is a year for him that I think we all just automatically thought that he would check the boxes and really kind of ignore the growing pains that a young quarterback will typically go through. And he went through growing pains. Like, the first half of the season, he was bad. He wasn't a good quarterback at all. And eventually towards the middle part, he gets to Mississippi State. He starts playing better. Vanderbilt, he starts playing a little bit better. Georgia happened to that team, though. You can't ignore that in the second half of the season. Georgia whipped that ass. And so, but it wasn't an Arch thing. The whole team got their ass kicked that day. Like the whole team. It wasn't an Arch thing or Georgia just kicked their ass. Now it's about him saying, okay, older, wiser, smarter. But I think the biggest thing for Arch, though, is they've got more weapons around him this year than they had last year. I think they went through an experiment that they quickly realized was not the best experiment, which was they said, well, we're just going to go ahead and develop our guys. And it's like, oh, or you can just go to the transfer portal and get guys who are already developed and call it a day. So they go out and get Cam Coleman from Auburn, who might be arguably the number 2 receiver in the country to Jeremiah Smith. They go out and get 2 running backs. They get Raleek Brown from Arizona State. He was 1,000-yard back. They get Hollywood Smothers, who was like at 9 something, right? So he was really close to 1,000. So you basically get 2 essential 1,000-yard backs on your roster. They get a tight end from Michigan State, this guy by the name of Michael Masunis. He's probably happy someone mentioned him. But they get a tight end with him. They brought in a right tackle by the name of Melvin Siani from Wake Forest, so he kind of anchors that side. They're going to have a battle at the guard position, but they're going to try to strengthen. What they quickly realize is, hey, man, you know what we can't do? We can't have Arch Manning and not give him the most weapons that are possible at his disposal. They go out and try to shore up the defense and bring in a guy like Will Muschamp. So I think for Arch, there's more weapons around him. The offensive line should hopefully be better. The offensive line was atrocious last year. They should hopefully be better. And if they can take some pressure off of him, then that should, in theory, make him a better quarterback. And for his sake, hopefully live up to the hype. You know, this is a guy that last year, you know, the Athletic question if he was one of the first biggest bust in college football. So, you know, and he had in Arch has never gone his career where he's actually been criticized. It's always been great. High school, great. Youth league, great, right? Every time he played was great. Back up to Quinn, anything you did was great. But now you're the man. It's like, oh, man, you suck. He's like, I suck. I've never heard anybody say this, right? And so, but he was able to mentally recover from that. And so now it's just kind of for him putting like the icing on the cake. You know, now he's been able to go through the growing pains. And now it's just trying to get to that finish line.
And that's kind of my next question is what difference do you see in him from somebody who was the backup, who was content to wait behind Quinn Ewers, who was his own 5-star guy coming out of high school, Ohio State, then to Texas. And now he's the man, went through those growing pains, went through those criticisms. How have you seen him mature here this spring, over the summer, and now getting ready to step up and well, if you will, take what he says, what he thinks this is?
Well, look, I'll say this. I've always said this. The easiest season to win is the offseason. Everybody feels good about the offseason. There's a team out there that didn't win a damn game last year that feels really good about how their offseason is going, right? The great thing, you guys do this all the time. You know, you guys cover media days and everything like that. Every media day, someone thanks their strength and conditioning coach for all the work that they didn't put in. And, you know, everyone's got the team barbecue that they all went to and team camaraderie. So I can tell you what I've been heard. I just use that as my caveat to say, I hear he's more of a vocal leader, right? I hear that because he missed a lot of the spring, right? So he didn't get a chance to do a lot of things there. He was recovering from a minor foot surgery. And then he did things in the summer. I think the better answer to the things that you're asking about or mentioning as far as my growth, what I've seen, I think I'll see a little bit more of that in training camp. And the players report today. Training camp first practice is tomorrow. I think I'll see a little bit more of that from him. The one thing I don't want to do, and I don't want to make the mistake that I did last year, is just assume that everything's going to be all right. I just assumed, well, he's a Manning, he's with Sark, at Texas, they go on to the playoffs, everything's going to be okay. I don't want to assume that this year. So I can tell you I want to take a wait and see approach, and I might be one of the few that actually do that. But I want to take a wait and see approach as relates to Arch. It doesn't mean I don't think he's going to be good. It doesn't mean I don't think he's going to have a really good season. But they play Ohio State in week 2. I'll give you a better answer then. Right. I will not against Texas State in week 1. All due respect to them. I'll give you the better answer then because they got Ohio State in week 2, and then the SEC and which does usually everything really, really good. But they decided, you know what we're going to do? Let's just make it harder and go to a 9-game conference schedule. Okay. So wait. But it's like, hey, have you guys seen that there aren't any 9-3 teams that are making the college football playoffs? Yeah, but we're just going to make it harder on our guys anyway. Okay. Meanwhile, Indiana's taking off anybody with a pulse. Anybody with a pulse, they're taking off the schedule. They're like, no. We want to play 3 tough games a year. So give me Arch in week 2 versus Ohio State. Let me then get past Tennessee at the end of this of the end of September, and get past Oklahoma and get to the lot, and then I'll be able to let you know. But I would say that he does have the weapons around him. He is a veteran. He should, in theory, be playing better. He did play better the second half of the season. I just don't want to just act like everything's going to be okay without knowing for sure everything's going to be okay, especially the offensive line.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I think even last year, it was the Ohio State game when we all went, oh, whoa, wait a minute. Maybe he's not quite ready. It was kind of a wake-up call. Maybe this year, a year later, he's at home, all the things you just mentioned, it's a different result there at DKR. Absolutely. Anwar, man, always great to talk with you. We appreciate you spending some time with us. We know it's not as much fun as your European vacation, but get ready for this fall.
Don't worry about it. I got a lot of trips in the fall that I'm going to make up for that Euro trip. I'll be sitting in my residence inn it was on a Saturday, and I'll be thinking of, man, I really had a lot of fun last summer. So all right, guys, I appreciate you.
And thanks, man. Anwar Richardson joining us once again with our OrangeBloods.com. Always good to have him here on the show, talking about the Texas Longhorns. And again, the big story, again, Arch Manning, he's exactly right. All of us kind of just assumed, like you said, he's a Manning. He's going to come up and just things are going to magically happen. That didn't take place. Can he come through and step up and meet those expectations here in 2026? We will all be watching. All right, stay with us. Much more to come here on the Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
Are you tired of your website making your business look bad? Is your current web developer dropping the ball? Let's face it, if your website isn't making you money, it's broken. Let Neon Rain create a website that turns your visitors into customers. Neon Rain has worked with hundreds of businesses across North America, building custom websites and applications with modern designs that are easy to update and work well on mobile devices. They can do it for you too. What sets Neon Rain apart? They actually deliver on their promises. Call today for a free consultation. 303-957-3092. That's Neon Rain at 303-957-3092. Or visit them at neonrain.com.
If you're a diabetic, we have great news. You can end the painful finger sticks with a new CGM. Plus, they may be covered by Medicare, Medicaid, or private insurance. If you test and inject daily, you may qualify. Call US Med now to learn more.
800-390-5160. 800-390-5160. 800-390-5160. That's 800-390-5160.
Man, so much college football right now. It's great stuff, isn't it? Here in the middle of the first week of August, we talked LSU. We've talked Texas, and Anwar's hilarious. Producer Tony, now we're going to talk. You're telling us at the top of the show a little more SEC. Your preseason top 25. We're now at number 18. Who you got there?
Yeah, this one's a little. I'm taking a leap of faith with this one, Larry. This is a gut instinct more than anything else. I'm going with the Florida Gators at number 18. I know they were 4-8. Look, the last 5 years of this Florida program has just been a nightmare. Yeah. They've gone through 4 different coaches, 2 regulars, 2 interims. This is the worst stretch of Florida football since the 40s. So got a lot of Florida fans have never seen anything like this. Most Florida fans have never seen anything like the last 4 years. I think they've got the right guy in place in John Sumrall to kind of turn things around right away. you can't tell me there's not talent on that roster. I look at that roster. I look at the recruiting rankings. I look at what some of these kids have done on the field already, and there's talent there. They just couldn't get it to the surface with the other coaches, with Napier and his predecessor. I think that Sumrall can. He's never had such riches in his coaching career coming over from Tulane. He's now got a chance to, go from driving the Yugo and getting the most out of it he possibly could to stepping up into, like a brand new Lexus. So the chances are there. It's a stretch. But I think this team can be in the middle of the pack in the SEC, and they're going to pull off a couple of upsets, I think, this year.
I love that thinking because we just heard Anwar a few minutes ago say that everyone wins. The easiest season to win is the off season. And John Sumrall certainly did that. Boy, he, at the SEC Media Days a couple of weeks ago, he was just, a ball of confidence up there, right? I mean, he just was firing off one-liners. It was excited, and everything else. Let's see what happens once they get on the field. But you're right, there is talent there. And the thing is, they're going to need to pull off a couple of upsets to get to this point because the schedule is so tough in the SEC. But I'm with you. I'm rooting for him. I just think his story is a great one. Played in the SEC at Kentucky, had success not at one level, but two levels. Everyone's looking for that next Curt Cignetti, and it's unfair to put that label on John Sumrall or any other coach coming up, to the highest ranks of college football. But if anybody can do it, yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, this is an offense that looks like it could be kind of special. Philo is starting to take the reins. He's been thought of as the next big thing down there in Florida. They've got 1,000-yard back in the backfield. They got the potential for 1,000 or 2,000-yard receivers out there. The talent is obviously there. If they can get it to come to a head, they're good. The first three games, the toughest game, the first two are gimmies. We know that. I don't think they're going to stumble the way, Napier has done in the past. I don't think Sumrall is that kind of coach. I think he'll get them over that hump. So if they can find a way to win a road game at Auburn in Sumrall's first SEC contest, that'll be his first SEC game at Auburn in week 3. If they do that, they're undefeated going into play Ole Miss. And Ole Miss is coming to the Swamp. Suddenly, now you're playing with house money at that point. Yeah. So, and if you find a way to upset an Ole Miss team that, is going through changes itself, suddenly you're 4-0. Suddenly the confidence is rising high down there in the Swamp. I think if they can get to that point, if they can just get off to a good start, that's been the problem in the past few years. Florida starts have just been horrible. They just haven't been able to get out of their own way. If they can get off to a good start, you know what that does to 18, 19-year-old kids. If they get some confidence, suddenly things start to click. I think this team could be a real surprise down there in the SEC if things go their way. It smells like a return to the way things used to be in the Swamp under Sumrall.
Yeah. We saw that a couple of years ago where Florida got a couple of wins and that propelled them to the 8-win season. To your point, the converse was last year where, they lost early at home to South Florida, which elevated Alex Golesh, who is now at Auburn, their third opponent, as you mentioned. And the wheels just came off from there at 4-8. Their schedule, they've got back-to-back weeks, and boy, this is not good. At Texas and home against Georgia, or the world's largest cocktail party, which we're not supposed to call that anymore, but I'm still going to call it that because that's what people know it as, the game in Jacksonville. But otherwise, there's no Alabama, there's no Texas A&M. I don't know if there's ever an easy schedule in the SEC, but you do avoid a couple of the heavyweights in those two.
Yeah, those will be interesting games. And I think the Georgia game might actually be in
May. Yeah.
They're redoing the stadium there in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
So the Jags aren't playing there. So I know they're not having the cocktail game there. I'm just not sure exactly. It might be in Orlando. I'll have to look that up. I didn't catch that earlier. But I just think there's going to be good things happening down there. Yeah. Like I said, confidence breeds confidence.
Absolutely. Florida right now, again, at number 18 in Tony's second annual preseason top 25. Producer Tony, we appreciate that. Hey, we appreciate our guests as well coming by, Koki Riley and Anwar Richardson. We always appreciate you as well. It's a Sports IQ. Make it a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow, right here, same place.
Thanks for listening to Sports IQ with Larry Smith, Monday through Friday. Continue the conversation at Sports IQ LS. We'll see you next time.